Welcome into the roundtable. I'm Brad Wakai. That is my co-host, Tyson Gentry. We are back today with another episode of the NFL Offseason Office because, Tyson, there has been a lot of movement, a lot of chatter, and a lot of things happening behind the scenes here in the NFL front as we get ready for the NFL draft.
Well, we told you what happens. Like, they let the NCAA tournament kind of run the month of March. They let the Masters have the first weekend in April, and then as soon as the NBA playoffs are ready to get up and rolling, the NFL says, "Hey, why don't you go ahead and tell Schefter he can let the news out that Jeff Okudah just got traded."
100%. So we got a ton to talk about. Like Tyson mentioned, the Jeff Okudah trade. What does that mean for the Lions? Is that something that the Falcons are now interested in kind of bolstering there? Or do they believe in him? Whatever. We'll touch on that. Also, Devin White, Tampa Bay Buccaneers linebacker, requests a trade. We're also going to discuss potentially Derrick Henry getting moved to a team. And then there's been some rumors about Bryce Young and some very big steam in the gambling markets that Bryce Young's now going number 1 overall. So we'll touch on that. But let's dive into this right now because this is a big name and it's a big player and somebody who used to be a big-time player, just a flat-out star in Odell Beckham Jr. He signed with the Ravens. Apparently Lamar Jackson recruited him there. Is that something here? So let's touch on that first and foremost. What does this mean to the Ravens as it's currently constructed right now, whether it is Tyler Huntley or Lamar Jackson as quarterback? What can he provide for the Ravens?
Well, let's just get the elephant out of the room real fast. I think there's a 0% chance that the Ravens commit up to $18 million. Obviously, that's the max that his contract can pay over 1 year. It's probably not going to work out to that much. Very, very low likelihood that they agree to that contract without knowing that they have a quarterback. So I think this puts the Lamar thing in kind of a new light because we were all sure here for the last couple of weeks that like, oh, it's finally over. He's going to go somewhere else. Now it sure seems like Lamar's a Raven. As far as what Odell Beckham can bring to the table, for 3 weeks, him and Rashad Bateman are going to be really good together. And I don't know if you get the rest of the 14 out of those two. I mean, he's dynamic. He's a good playmaker. We haven't seen him in 2 years, but a lot of the things that he did well, he's still going to do well. Like he's going to get open. He's going to catch touchdowns. I'm very worried. And maybe it's the Ravens part of it, but like, when's the last time a wide receiver there stayed healthy for an entire season, dude?
It's been a while. It certainly has been a while. And it kind of brings the question again, the discussion about what the Ravens do at the wide receiver position as an organization, right? They haven't drafted that position well, as we've known. And then they go to the free agency market and they get a guy coming off an ACL injury, had to miss all of last season. And so, again, it doesn't seem like this is something they're prioritizing position-wise in that organization. Obviously, they gave Roquan Smith a huge money. You would think that they would want to prioritize the quarterback position. Haven't decided to pull the trigger on what Lamar Jackson wants, and that can be a whole different discussion regarding all the guaranteed money and everything. But when you look at on the surface, this is a big name. It's a big signing, and we're like, awesome. The Ravens are aggressive getting Lamar a wide receiver, but this isn't Odell Beckham from 5 years ago. This is a guy who looked good in the later stretches of the Rams and looked like he was on his way to being an impact player in the Super Bowl for the Rams. Blew out his ACL, had to miss the entire year, and there's legit questions. A guy who is built on explosiveness, built on change of direction and speed, is he going to be the same type of player when he comes back to the field?
You know what? This is Dwayne Wade and Rajon Rondo to the Bulls. That's a lot how this feels like to me. We're putting butts in seats. We're excited. It moves the needle for fans, but then once you actually get the on-court or on-field product, it looks awfully similar to what you had before that guy showed up. I think Odell, in the way that he looked in the Super Bowl before he hurt himself, would certainly unlock kind of a new style that the Ravens are able to play on offense, like you said, with the explosiveness and things like that. If that's hindered at all from the injury or even from age, then it's not going to be the same thing. But we keep kind of forgetting that this is a Todd Monken offense now. The offensive coordinator from Georgia that comes up his first real NFL job here. And it's going to look different in Baltimore. And I think you have to have wide receivers to play football the way that Georgia played football the last couple of years, even though they're going to love Mark Andrews even more probably now in this offense. But, like, you have to have somebody to take the pressure off. And no matter what, the respect that Odell Beckham gets from defensive coaches in the league and defensive players in the league, 10 times what Devin Duvernay was getting when he was scoring 2 touchdowns a game at the beginning of the year. Like, just name value alone is going to, I think, help as far as, like, you have to respect the wide receivers on the Baltimore Ravens at least a little bit more than you did, whether Odell's 100% or 70.
And like you said, it's all dependent on health. Bateman's been injury prone. Beckham, again, we're talking about the questions about him coming back, and he could be completely fine, but an older player. To add to this before we move on, there are reports out there that the Ravens aren't done looking to upgrade their receiver position, whether that's continued in the market, which, you know, I don't know if necessarily there's anybody out there like, man, that upgraded our position room. But I think they're going to draft somebody in the draft. And we discussed that in our last edition of the NFL Draft Dive that we did here on YouTube in podcast form. I think they kind of have to go that route in the draft here.
It'd be weird if they didn't, but they've done a lot weirder things. I mean, going center safety last year certainly kind of showed us where their values lie as an organization. And, you know, that's just the way that they do things. And so this is a step in the right direction, I think, for the Baltimore Ravens. And if you're a Ravens fan, let yourself be excited. Even if, like, this isn't the guy that you wanted to come through the door, it's still a guy walking through the door. And it's very low likelihood, like I said, that they would make this deal without knowing that it's Lamar Jackson. It's a 0% chance that Odell Beckham decides to go to Baltimore not knowing if Lamar Jackson is going to be his quarterback.
So moving on to the Jeff Okudah trade here, Tyson. The Lions decided to give up on their first-round draft pick from a few years ago. They shipped them out to the Falcons, bringing back a fifth-round draft pick in this year's draft. So the questions, I think, are multiple angles that we can attack here. The first one is, what do the Lions now do with their 6th overall pick? We said on a previous episode of the Draft Dive, we think it's going to be Devin Witherspoon from Illinois. We think he's a perfect fit. We think he kind of fits like that attitude that Dan Campbell wants. Is that the route they potentially go? And, you know, there's some other questions or some mock drafts, like maybe they go defensive end if they want to fortify their defensive front. We both think Witherspoon would be the guy, and this trade points to them taking a cornerback with that early pick.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason that I love draft season so much, is that was it was considered a long shot when I placed that the other day, and now it's looking a little bit more likely. So when it doesn't hit, I can be a little bit less upset at my dumb brain than I would have been otherwise. Look, dude, Jeff Okudah was hurt to start, and then he was bad, and then he was hurt again, and then he was bad, and then he came back and he was a little bit better. But this is a guy that he has got the famous combine interview where the reporter tells him he looks sloppy. He says, I have 0 pass interference, 0 holding, cut the tape on. It's been pretty sloppy in the NFL. That reporter might not have known what he's talking about at that moment, but he certainly predicted the future a little bit. Like, massive disappointment. I mean, this is a guy you take number 3 overall. You're expecting Jalen Ramsey, right? That's the guy that you want to take when you take a corner that high. He certainly didn't turn into that. I kind of like it from both sides. You get a guy who we don't know the ins and outs, but I bet you that if he was a Dan Campbell guy, he doesn't leave for a 5th-round pick. So they get somebody out, and they get a little bit of value back. And then as far as like how he's going to fit in his new digs, it's a pretty good secondary group actually to walk into instead of kind of getting thrown into the fire. Like, you are the number 1 corner the second you step on the field, and some guys just aren't ready for that. So I'm a little bit excited, to be honest with you, about the Jeff Okudah prospects going forward. And like I said, if it doesn't work, you know, you're Atlanta, you wash your hands of a 5th-round pick, who cares? And if you're Detroit, it's like, well, we were going to cut him.
I 100% agree. I think this is great for both sides. Getting a 5th-round pick back, and you may be like, what? They took him 3rd overall. Like, you're not getting anything. It's like, that's just not how the value works in the NFL system. And I don't think there's any league that has it more to a T, like what draft value is worth compared to active players than the NFL. Like, it's almost a science at this point. Like, oh, this guy's been in the league for this amount of years. Okay, this is what you get back. This is his value. Like, it's pretty unbelievable how they've gotten it to a T. Shout out Jimmy Johnson, who basically figured this out, and then Bill Belichick
for us
and his family. Dude, it's crazy how you know, it's just legitimately down to a science now. AJ Terrell, Casey Hayward, Jeff Okudah. Those are your projected depth chart right now for the Atlanta Falcons. Like you said, not a bad group. And they got Jesse Bates coming over, who played at Cincy last year, to be in the back half of that secondary. This is interesting. Now, I don't know if this means The Falcons think they legitimately can compete in a very bad division.
Of course they do. They always do.
True. That's a good point. But this is a secondary that was lit up like for the past few years. I think they're probably sick and tired of seeing that happen. So like, screw it. Let's take a chance on a guy who was the number 3 overall pick a few years ago. Let's give up a 5th round pick on our end, and maybe it can work. Maybe it doesn't. Who knows? But I'm excited for the Lions, man. I think they're heading into the right direction. If a guy's not going to work out on that football team, why not make a move now? And like you said, they were going to probably cut him anyway. You got a 5th round pick back in this draft when you're looking to add players like right now who can help you win a division. I think it's a match made in heaven if it works out for both.
Yeah, especially that if Jeff Okudah comes out and plays like crap this year, the Lions don't recoup a 5th round pick in a comp pick formula scenario, right? They get nothing. So they're hedging their bets a little bit. And then if you're Atlanta, it's like, I don't love any of these corners in the 5th. We need another guy. Give me the dude who oozed potential coming. Although, remember when he came out, it was like, this is the most pro-ready corner we've seen in a long time. And he got to the league, and it was like, oh, this dude's not ready for the pros. It's not quite the same. But, I mean, I'm cheering for him. I like to watch Jeff Okudah. It's just like, put your hands, he's got Bradbury syndrome a little bit. He likes to get grabby, and he's not quite as fast as he used to be.
Here is one that was really interesting.
Speaking of speed.
Devin White, star linebacker from the Tampa Bay Bucs, has requested a trade. This is coming from ESPN's Jenna Lane, who first reported this. This is coming. She said 2 of her sources have said this, that he wants out. Apparently, he is, quote unquote, fed up with the team. I don't know if this is coming from how bad he thinks the Bucs are going to be, if he feels like he's been disrespected. He has his 5th-year option coming up. I'm not sure if they were going to, quite honestly, pick up that 5th-year option and giving him an extension. So I don't know what's coming behind the scenes and kind of where this animosity is coming from, and even if it's on both sides. But apparently the Bucs have no plans to trade him. So we're looking at one of these classic situations in the NFL, Tyson, where the player's like, screw it, I want out of here. And the NFL is like, nope, we have control. We have you under contract. See you at training camp, buddy.
Well, you mentioned the NFL being down to a science with draft picks. This is not the NBA. You don't get to just say, like, I'm not playing, trade me, and James Harden your way to wherever you want to go, or Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, take your pick. The NFL just says, fuck you. And then you sit on the sideline and you pay them while you miss games, and just moves on, and people forget about you. For all you Madden players out there, you're going to think Devin White's the best player in the world. When it comes to actually cutting the tape on and watching this guy, like, the freakiness of his athleticism is evident from, the word go on kickoff. You can see it when he's playing special teams. He's not tackling very well. He can't cover to save his life. And this is like my guy. Devin White's like one of my favorite players. He's taken a serious step back in, I don't want to say skill level, but in his production, certainly since they won the Super Bowl. And he was everybody's favorite middle linebacker in the league. It was like him or Roquan. Who do you want? And now it's pretty evident who you would pick there. Devin White, I'm on his team here. Like, I don't want to play for the Bucs this year either. Like, I just had Tom Brady, and now you're telling me I got to be okay with missing the playoffs in the middle of my prime here. The problem is, we've discussed it, ad nauseum, but linebackers aren't paid. Nobody's really prioritizing linebackers unless your name's like Fred Warner, unless you're peak Bobby Wagner, guys like that, Luke Kuechly. You got to be special to get paid in the NFL. And Devin White just, frankly, isn't special. Like, he does things that are one of one, but then he does a lot of things that are one of one in the complete opposite direction. And it's like, you don't know some plays whether you're watching him or Alex Singleton. Like, that's how bad it gets.
Yeah, I apologize. So the Bucs have picked up his 5th-year option. So this is going to pay him $11.7 million this season. But he's apparently looking for an extension and a larger payday. So that's where the rub is. That's where the difference of opinion comes. And apparently, White was unhappy back in March, saying, he wants to leave. And the team's like, nope, you're really good. He's only 25 years old. A dude who's freaky talented, like you said, Tyson, but it's coming to the point where he is regressing. And I think the Bucs know that. And the Bucs they were willing to shell out money during that window with Brady, and it got him a Super Bowl. So you always want your franchises and teams across any sport, really, to be aggressive when they have a window to win a championship. And the Bucs did that. And I think now they're like, listen, that window's closed. We don't really want to keep shelling out money to guys that we think is kind of their play is diminishing. And whether that's fair to Devin White or not, that's what the tape suggests. Now, maybe he can go be elite in another situation, a little change of scenery would never hurt him. Who knows? But I think right now, where the Bucs are as a franchise, giving him a ton of money would not be a smart move from that front office. It just comes down to this, Tyson. Do they think they're going to get fair value back if they are trading Devin White? Because we're not the only ones who have seen him diminish on the football field. Every other team's like, oh, we'd love to have Devin White, but not for X amount of picks, not for this high of a pick.
I think this is a late into the offseason and then turns into like a Chauncey Gardner-Johnson deal a year ago where everyone's kind of scratching their heads like, oh, there's a fourth and a fifth. But nobody else wanted to pay it last year when Philadelphia went and got him from New Orleans. I think that this could be a similar situation where they're going to dangle him maybe during the draft. Somebody like they really love somebody in the late second, early third round, something like that, and they use Devin White as a trade piece. This is not a first-round player. It's probably not a second-round player, especially for the money. I do agree with you, though. I think that if he gets into a new scheme, Devin White should play a hell of a lot more like Patrick Queen in the role that he plays in Baltimore than sometimes having him try to beat Levante David too out on the football field. Sometimes they don't do him any favors, and you drop him into coverage, and he's got Kelsey one-on-one. It's a wrap for anybody, let alone a guy that's a bad coverage dude. But like, this is just big Jamal Adams. Okay, that's like who we're talking about here. And I think a guy that's not good enough in coverage to play safety, and he's a small linebacker too. Don't let anybody tell you any different. But he just wants to fly around and hit people. And it's getting to the point in the NFL now where that role doesn't really exist on half the teams in the league.
Yeah, and there's some potential landing spots for Devin White out there if you want to look through that. I don't honestly know. I'll just put it this way. The Eagles I see one on a list. The Eagles are not trading for Devin White to give him a ton of money. Like that, they do not prioritize the linebacking position like that. So take everything with a grain of salt. Nobody really knows, I think right now, what the Bucs, if they would even be willing to trade him. They said they won't, but if there's going to have to be a great package that comes their way for them to give up this player. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. One team that I think would be really fun, and I don't know if they have a need for him, but I just think watching Devin White play in Pittsburgh would be pretty sweet.
Oh, man. Yeah. Especially
this is still a guy with a second team All-Pro trophy, sitting at home. So we're sitting here like, oh, this guy can't play. He's a 25-year-old former second team All-Pro. So there are going to be coaches out there that are just like, dude, it hasn't been that long since I turned that college tape on, and like if we get that guy, we're winning the Super Bowl.
Oh, 100%, completely agree with you. Like he can still be a stud in this offense or this league. We've just seen him diminish. We need to point that out. But I agree with you, man. He still has the potential to be a top end linebacker in this league. Now, here's an interesting rumor. There's been some scuttlebutt going around that the Cowboys are looking to trade for Derrick Henry. Tyson, if you want to illuminate a little bit more on what you heard this.
Well, this is coming from. Let me see. Some athletic or some executive apparently told the Athletic, Mike Sando. But basically, the report is that the Cowboys are going to check on Derrick Henry's availability during the NFL draft, which to me signals certainly what we've been pounding the table for here for the last couple of weeks, that Bijan Robinson is going to go higher than you think in the NFL draft. And this is the time of year where nothing means anything. So maybe it's just somebody out there that's like, Dallas loves running backs. Like, they'll trade for Derrick Henry and take on that contract. They don't care. But to me, like, you let Zeke walk. You have Tony Pollard under the franchise tag for $11 million. He just broke his leg. We don't know. We don't know how Tony Pollard's coming back, what he's going to look like. And Mike McCarthy says he wants to run the shit out of the ball. Derrick Henry and the Titans, I think, when you think of one, you think of the other. But the Titans certainly are kind of taking on the look of a team that, like, we're just going to take a couple years. We don't want to pay anybody for, like, 2 seasons. Okay, we got Big Jeff locked down. We got a couple of these other defensive guys locked down. They're asking Kevin Byard for money back. They're trying to build a new stadium. There's a whole lot of things that kind of point to, like, I don't really want to pay this running back. And I think Dallas is a pretty easy scapegoat when it comes to who's going to pick up the running back. Oh, Cowboys. First on the list every time, no matter what.
I think the point that McCarthy wants to run the ball more too is very interesting in this whole thing because who do they really have, Tyson? I mean, Zeke's gone, it feels like. I mean, if he comes back, what are we doing here, Dallas?
Also, who cares? Like, it's not the same thing.
No, and he's done. Like, Derrick Henry and Zeke Elliott. Yeah, it's completely different. Like, Derrick Henry is head and shoulders above what Zeke Elliott is at this point in his career. I think it would be interesting. I think if the Cowboys look at this thing and say, if we get Derrick Henry, like, we could be a big threat in the NFC. I would be hard pressed to disagree with that. I know that offensive line's deteriorating a bit, but man, oh man, he would open up things for that passing attack for sure.
Well, if they could have ran the ball last year, they would have been playing in the NFC Championship game. They couldn't get anything working on offense, even the free ones. They were going 2 yards, right? And then the Niners just kind of put them on the ropes and did away with them. But this was a team that was probably the third best one in the NFC last year, and you would figure a healthy 100% Derrick Henry might even put him over top of Philly in that division as far as Vegas lines and things like that preseason. I would love it as an Eagles fan. Like, go get another 28-year-old running back, pay him a bunch of money. That's perfectly fine with me. But it's not there's no coincidence in the fact that the Cowboys pop up first for every running back, free agency or draft, because they love the position. Because they've been the only ones seemingly for the last decade that have invested over and over and over again in that position. They're zigging while everyone else zags. So they're kind of an easy fit for that. It's just, wouldn't you rather draft Tank Bigsby in the early fourth than send over some picks to get Derrick Henry for $12 million? It's just one man's perspective.
No, I think you're right, and especially when you're talking about zigging while everybody's zagging. Like, there's analytics out there, and I know people are like, "Oh my God, the data nerds," and we're not even on that spectrum of like we're the uber nerds. But I mean, there's like EPA, expected points added per play, like where you see these first down runs do not help you put the ball into the end zone. And it feels like that's what Mike McCarthy wants to run his offense through. And if that's the case, he might be the first coach fired if this thing actually doesn't work, because you can't go backwards, especially what the NFL is doing now, where it's so much more forward. You can see different things that we couldn't in the past with these models, with these charting, with things like that. And if, first of all, you don't have an explosive running back as of now, and you're deciding that you're just going to run the ball more than pass when you have like a good quarterback in Dak Prescott, you're going to look at the guy who makes those decisions, McCarthy, and be like, come on, this is unacceptable.
Look, man, I am 3 for 3 the last 3 years picking which coach gets fired first. I'm not letting you take the mantle. So I'm going to have to evaluate everybody and see who's getting fired before Mike McCarthy.
All right, let's close out this edition of the Offseason Office with some major NFL draft news and rumors that Bryce Young is favored to be the number 1 overall pick now. It was CJ Stroud for a long time in the betting markets. Bryce Young is now a minus 200 favorite in the betting markets, which is a significant line movement from where he was as the secondary favorite at plus 300-ish, plus 200-ish, depending on where you looked. So this begs the question, I think, Tyson, going back to the original thing that happened when the Panthers traded up to the number 1 pick, and they're like, well, the Panthers could trade back, and everybody's like, what? That's crazy. Is it that crazy, or are they falling in love with Bryce Young?
I think the only way that they trade back is if the Texans are like they have to come up to 1. I was always under the impression that it was going to be Bryce Young. I got swayed a little bit just from everything, all the inundation of news that was like they love CJ Stroud, blah, blah, blah. Luke McCown loves Bryce. Frank Reich loves Bryce. Everybody that apparently that they have on the offensive coaching staff loves Bryce Young. You know who was the number 1 pick in this draft 2 years ago? Bryce Young. The number 1 pick all of last season, Bryce Young. As soon as the season ended, Bryce Young. And then all of a sudden, we got to draft season and people are nitpicking now. He's too small. There's nobody that looks like him that plays at a super high level, all this stuff. I heard that with Kyler Murray. I heard it with Baker Mayfield. He still went number 1 overall. Like, if the talent is there, and he's a better thrower of the football. He's a better quarterback than either one of those two guys, I think. CJ Stroud's great, man. Bryce Young has been him. the entire time he's been in college football. And to be honest with you, I think that the size concerns they're certainly there, and I have them too. But this is like he did it in the SEC, and he didn't get
Right.
hurt. He didn't get hit. He didn't once hit a lineman in the back of the head, which is the stupidest. I hate when they're like, he's not even how's he going to throw it over top of the lineman?
So
it's like
dumb.
Russell Wilson doesn't doink anybody. Well, he did, but for the first 10 years, Russell didn't doink anybody. Bryce Young has been the guy the entire time. And then we just got tricked for 2 months. And I think we're back to water found its level, which means Will Levis will be going number 1 in the 2023 NFL draft.
I'm confident that Will Levis will not be going 1 to the Panthers, at least. I mean, maybe if somebody gets crazy and wants to trade all the way up, a few of the teams on the list apparently that are interested in him. Oh, by the way, do you see who is meeting with Will Levis this week, Tyson? For the second time?
Teams.
Yeah, all three teams, the Bucs, the Titans, who I said were very interested in him. But what are you going to do? Bryce Young, I think he's the number 1 pick. We've been on this. We watch a ton of SEC football, and me being from Penn State, watched a ton of C.J. Stroud reluctantly at Ohio State. There are things that Stroud does, I think, that Bryce Young, quite frankly, can't do. And I think that's standing in the pocket and delivering throws. What has been diminished, I think, a ton in the NFL over the most recent years is that this pocket moves. And it's not so much that, it used to be the Michael Vick thing where the line is still right where it was at pre-snap and Vick's on the outside of the pocket. It's that the play design is moving the pocket. Like the linemen are moving with the quarterback. And Bryce Young does that better than C.J. Stroud does. And so Frank Reich, who's extremely forward-thinking, if he looks at Bryce Young and says, I can just plug him into what I want to do, and C.J. Stroud's a statue, and we have concerns about his mobility, which I think a ton of people do when watching the tape, and I certainly do. Why would you not, with this number 1 pick, take the guy that you think fits the coordinator and coach to a T? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. You quit trying to put a square peg in a round hole. And I'm not saying C.J. Stroud's not good. I think if Bryce Young
is one,
C.J. Stroud should go too. I just called him a square. A little Ohio State hate there, but but my thing is, Tyson, I'm not going to be shocked if somebody gets a little antsy and goes up to number 1, and the Panthers are like, hey, we just duped everybody. We actually wanted Stroud because Reich has said we want Stroud, and this is all just a big game of smoke and mirrors.
Which it totally could be. And before we get out of here, like you mentioned, moving the pocket. Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Trevor Lawrence. Like, take your pick of the top young quarterbacks in the NFL and watch them play, and then go put a Vikings game on, right? And then go put a Giants game on and watch Daniel Jones. Yeah, guys like that. And really, and Patriots, for instance, like if you want to go young, Mac Jones versus some of the way these guys, and maybe Mac could move the pocket a little bit, but like that's the way the NFL is heading. And part of the reason is because it creates such a ridiculous advantage for the offense when things are moving. Guys are trading places. Defenders are now grabbing. You're accidentally getting a face mask or whatever. You get a free 15. It's ridiculous to sit here and look at prospects and then not compare them in that way to the top offenses in the NFL, because there's no way that Frank Reich is looking around and being like, I don't know. I mean, if we just ran the Kevin O'Connell offense and took out all the other stuff, like we'd be fine. They're looking at Andy Reid and being like, I need to one up what he's doing.
100%. Absolutely. Okay, that's going to wrap it up for our offseason office. It's been a lot of movement, a lot of rumors. It's been great getting back in the office here, discussing what's happening in the league. We will be back with another edition of the Draft Dive later this week as we continue plugging away, getting ready for the NFL draft that's coming up in just a few weeks. We appreciate you guys watching. Like, subscribe, and share the show. Follow us on our social media pages. We'll be back later this week. Until then, peace.